In this lesson, we will be taking a look at Autodesk Inventor's application options in regards to the sketch environment and for the part environment, as well as we'll be taking a look at the document settings and how that affects the individual parts, units, and also Autodesk Inventor, how we're utilizing templates. Let's get started by taking a look at the application options. So from the tools pull-down menu, second from the bottom is application options. And from the application options, we'll first take a look at the sketch environment. And the ones we're going to pay close attention to at this point are going to be the 2D sketch level. So the default is parallel and perpendicular. And what I want to do is I'm just going to draw a few lines with each of these so you can see the difference. So as I'm going to draw my first line, I get the horizontal line showing me that it's a horizontal constraint. As I draw that second line going back up, you'll notice that I have a perpendicular constraint and another parallel constraint, and I'm getting another parallel constraint that you can see on that right side. So let me undo those real quick, and let's take a look back at the application options, and I'm going to change it to the horizontal and vertical constraint. And let's go back and do the exact same thing as I draw in that line segment. Again, you'll see the very first line is going in horizontal, but in this case the next one is vertical, horizontal, and again it's going to be vertical. Let's undo that again, and again we'll take one more look at the application options, and in this case we'll take a look at the none option. So as I draw on those line segments, you'll see that I'm getting no constraints applied, with the exception that coincident constraints are being applied to the endpoints. The other way to get no constraints applied is to hold down the Control key while you're doing your sketching. So you can see in this case I'm able to freely drag that geometry around. So again, let's take a look at the application options, and let's talk a little bit about why that's important. The option is parallel and perpendicular, which will allow us to take a given piece of geometry, and as you would rotate it, it will maintain parallel and the perpendicular constraints, whereas horizontal and vertical, they'll always be horizontal and vertical. So that's why that is the option there. Some of these other options we will talk about in the remaining lessons as they're appearing. The next tab let's take a look at is going to be the part environment. So under the part, the options on the upper left hand corner is the sketch on new part creation. So what this is going to allow us to do, as we're going to create a new part, what sketch do we want to automatically be placed on? So the default is the XY plane. You could change that to YZ or XZ, but in most cases we're going to leave that at the YZ plane. The other options again we'll talk about as they appear in the given lesson. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how Autodesk Inventor starts off with new files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the new icon, and it's going to bring up the dialog box as shown here, and we have different tabs. So the default tab, these are going to be the options that are installed with Autodesk Inventor. It asks you, do you want to have inch or metric or millimeters in this case as the default, and that's what I have here in my installation. So yours may be inch. Also, if you have Autodesk Inventor Professional, you will have some other options with the AIP. So under the English, of course, this is going to be our inch, and metric, of course, is the millimeter. As you can see, I have a few other options here that I did under that default tab. And again, we have Professional, and this is going to be, again, if you have Inventor Professional installed, have a few more options. Now you can also create your own tabs. So for instance, maybe you're going to be creating some files for a specific client that you need to have a given template file. What you can do is you can create another tab, and let me show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to go to the Explorer window here, and as you work your way on down, we're going to go under Program Files, and then Autodesk, in this case Inventor 2008. Scroll on down, I'm looking for the Templates folder, and you can see I have a few other examples here already, right? The one that we just looked at. I'm going to copy the English folder. Going to paste that back in. And in this case, let's just call it CBT. So in this case, I could go back and remove some of these files if I needed to, or I could go back and modify one or place in some existing ones. But as long as I have some files that are in here, I'm going to go back to Inventor and click on the New icon again. And you'll notice I now have another tab up there called CBT with all of the options that are available that are in that file. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about in this lesson here is going to be units. So Autodesk Inventor is utilizing units. So let's start off a new file. In this case, I'm going to go back under the English tab, and let's go back and click under Standard IN for inch IPT. So I'm just going to draw a simple rectangle. And as we place a general dimension on that, you'll see in the dialog box it defaults to IN, in this case being inches. So as I just change that to 1, now I could type in IN for inches, or if I leave that blank and enter, it will default back down to inch, because that's exactly what this document is. It's set with the inch standard. Now I can override that if I select this other horizontal line to place a dimension. Let's change that to 40 millimeters. You'll notice that it defaults to the 1.575 inches because that's the document settings. But if I double click under that again, it says that it is millimeters. So if I change that back to 2, it goes back to 2 inches. So of course we can work with centimeters if we wanted. Anything that's a valid unit. If you happen to type something incorrect, you'll notice that it goes red, and red is bad. But now let's say I start off an inch, but I really want this to be a metric file. I can go under the Tools pull down, and I can make a setting change to the document settings where the application options are global. The document settings are for this specific document. So under the document settings, we have a couple different tabs. The one that we're interested right here is going to be under the Units tab. So I'm going to change this back to millimeters, and maybe also the mass, let's change that to grams. So now as I go back and do an update, so I have everything back here in millimeters. But remember, when this was created, this was 1 inch. So back underneath there, it still knows that it's 1 inch. So if I change that back and just say 30, it's going to understand that that is 30 millimeters. And here, it also remembered that that was 2 centimeters. Let's change that to 30 millimeters. The last thing I want to talk a little bit about is under the document settings. Under the Sketch tab, this is where we can also adjust if you want to work with the snap and the grid. You can adjust those here. So just very quickly, under the Tools Application Options, under the Sketch tab, and that's going to be the options on the right hand side here for the grid lines, minor axes. All of those are controlled on and off here, but the spacing between them is applied under the document settings.